Hello and good day to all friends. This is Mojtaba Rasti. I'm from the Thales team, and today is October 14th, 2025, and I'm here with you with a Bitcoin analysis using the Thales Market Screener tool. Please note that these analyses are for educational and informational purposes only. If you use this information to take positions in the market, you are responsible for your own profits and losses. Alright, we're on the 4-hour chart. After the upward move we made, up to around 116,000. As we expected, we actually started moving downward and reached the area around 111. Basically, somewhere between 110 and 112, we expected support. And right now we're in that same zone. Now, with a bit of fluctuation, a little up and down. We can actually adjust this lower trend line. I think it's shifted a bit. Let me just. Was it here? I think something like this is good. More or less, and we expected, and still expect, to see some support here. It's likely that from this area, around 110,000, we'll move upward toward 115, and maybe even higher, possibly toward 117 or 118. Or it might come down and form a double bottom here, for example, around 109,500. A double bottom that's actually getting pretty close to forming, and then it should move upward. Actually, this is a scenario that still has a chance of happening, that we might return inside this triangle. And there's another possibility, which has always been on the table and still is. That's breaking through 109,500 and moving downward, toward 107 and 108, which I was just looking at now. There are also signs of this in the market screener, so we can expect that move as well. For now, this downward corrective trend is continuing. We have to see what happens with this 109,500 support level. If it gets broken decisively, well, the trend is likely to continue downward unless we see support and a reversal back up. We could be a bit hopeful about a price recovery and a continuation of the upward move, but we'll have to see what happens in the coming days. Let's go ahead and check out the market screener to see what we've got there. I'm resetting the raw database of filters. From today up until this hour, for the expiration date. Tomorrow, October 15th. 3,506 bitcoins have been traded under 2,132 options contracts, and the result is shown in this graph. Well, as you can see, the overall shape of the red curve basically shows a call sell, which indicates a ceiling. Around 114,000, meaning that until tomorrow, our ceiling is kind of at 114,000. If we see a reversal to the upside, it would be up to around this 114,000 level, like up to here we could see a reversal. So, it seems like there isn't much hope for a significant move up if I move the slider forward. You can see that. From call situation, we reach a volatile state. A volatility. If we zoom in, you'll see its floor is 109,500 and its ceiling is that same 114,000. So, 109,500 until tomorrow. Here, we can expect it to find support. Until tomorrow, traders haven't wanted anything below this, below 109,500. If we take a look at the process database, we see the same situation there as well. Look, the floor since the beginning of trading has been 107,300. When I say the recent hour, I mean we're looking at the latest trades. Notice how the floor is moving higher. Here too, the floor is rising and settling at 109,500. This 109,500 is a very important level. If it provides support here and we move up, we could have a double bottom pattern, and then we might be able to. If this bullish leg completes up to 114, 115, then the double bottom pattern will have formed, and we can expect that the price might move even higher at that point. Alright, let's go ahead and draw my indicator and the zones. Okay, let's look at the intersection of the buyer and seller curves. As you can see, on the upper side, the buyer-seller agreement is exactly at 114,500, where these two curves intersect, 114,500. On the downside, our lower agreement and the intersection of the two curves is at 109,500. There's a slight profit, and also, the lower zone is the same as the agreement zone, that is, the zone created at the intersection of the two curves with the horizontal line. The seller doesn't want below 100,400, and the buyer wants below 109,680. So, this zone that's formed here is a zone where both groups agree, and the likelihood of the price being seen here is higher. And right now, we're moving toward it. We're now getting close to actually touching 109,500, but as you can see above, those zones are not agreement zones. The seller doesn't want above 114,200, but the buyer wants above 115,500. So, there's really no agreement on the upper side here. Let's enter these points into our indicator and continue. Alright, the movement of the zones. You can see the movement of the lower and upper bands of our indicator actually shifting downward. Although the low that was formed here is a bit higher than yesterday's low, which was 109,000. Yesterday, the low that's been predicted for tomorrow is 109,500, which is equal to the previous low we had. So, based on what we're seeing, this downward and corrective trend could continue. Unless, as I mentioned, the 109 level gives clear support here and pushes us back up. In that case, well, the scenario would have to be analyzed differently. Okay, let's update our zones on the chart and continue. Alright, as you can see, our zones have shifted downward compared to yesterday. The lower zone ranges from about 130 to 106. The upper zone is from around 114 to 200, up to about 115.5, and the middle zone is from 111.5 to 111 to 112. Right now, the price has pretty much touched the lower zone, so we can now. We could actually come down another 300 to 109,500, and that scenario we talked about is starting to make sense, like this scenario might actually happen. Look, this candle, before our current 4-hour candle, look at this candle too. It formed a long shadow, creating something like a hammer pattern. If this candle also closes upward and we end up with a hammer pattern, then we can expect a bullish leg, a bullish move to the upside, and maybe even a double bottom forms. You can see the zone is the same. The price is fluctuating between this bottom here and this top here, meaning the bottom is 109,500 and the top is around 115,000. So, with that scenario, it kind of makes sense, right? Let's go and activate this. and open short trades. Here. Let's do a refresh and see what the delta and gamma look like. Of course, if we move this forward, the shape of the curve will change a bit. It doesn't make a difference. Now, should we set it to include trades? As we said, it's a call sell, and this call sell for tomorrow has a ceiling at around 114, and it can even go up to 115. But right now, we're actually moving downward. As the price drops, you can see that delta increases, and this delta peak is at 107. In other words, the lowest point that's been seen or could be seen is 107, which for now is at. Even up to this point, where the price has actually bounced back, you can see it's a good spot. Delta is starting to bend a bit. So, delta is actually moving out of its exponential trend and starting to curve. So even right here, at 109 and 500, it's a good spot. And you could say that this is actually an important bottom, but the peak is that 107 you see here. We have a main gamma and the gamma short taker. In fact, the taker here is the seller. The seller has set it at 112 and about 600, which makes the gamma long maker at 112 and 600. Here, the gamma long maker is present, and in this case, our taker is the seller. There's a call and put seller, so our maker is also a buyer of calls and puts, which, of course, needs to be checked with the strike's end. You might be able to figure out which side is bigger from this. Based on the shape of the delta, it seems that there are more call sellers. Because, look, the sellers, on the delta chart, how deep have they penetrated from the break-even line? That shows the intensity of call selling, so this gamma long maker is probably due to call buying, which actually plays a resistance role here. Meaning, since call buying has a positive delta, when we get to this point, for the market maker and they can start selling to neutralize their position. And here, in fact, it acts as resistance to prevent the price from going higher. So, the important points we can have as the price moves upward, one of them is this very gamma that we mentioned. Here, the intersection of gamma and delta at 116 and 130, and here you can see gamma has a change in slope. Around 118, these are the key points to the upside. To the downside, the most important is right where we are, around 109,500, then the delta peak at 107. Then here, the intersection of the red curve and gamma at 106,120, and after that, the intersection of gamma and delta at 103,400. These are the important points we can actually gather from the intersections of the curves. Alright, let me bring this over here. Let's go. Let's see, if I add the 16th expiration, October 16th, take a look. The overall shape of the curve is still the same. If I remove tomorrow, 428 Bitcoin have been traded for the 16th. Well, that's very little, and again, look, the situation is still mostly corrective. So here, with the price dropping, we've had an increase in delta up to this point. Is it taking a break here? The delta on day 113 is around 112. From here down, the delta is decreasing, meaning from here to here, which is 107,500. The delta is decreasing, so we're seeing put selling. Along with the price drop, we have a decrease in delta, which means put selling, and as you can see, This has even led to a long gamma move from day 109 and 500 to 107 when we get here again. From 107 and below, with the price dropping, we see an increase in delta. Again, we see a bottom forming here, which starts from 107, so actually, it's not a sharp drop. At 107, we reach a bottom. And if we break through 109 and 500, we'll hit a bottom for October 16th. If we consider Friday, October 17th, which is the end of week expiration and important, look here. Here again, we're waiting for a bottom, which for Friday could be 107 or 106. It could be 106 or 107 for Friday, and look, 109 and 500 becomes 109 and 500 right here. We can see that we're very close to that target level, maybe even closer than we think. In fact, that bottom could be right in this 195 area too. Maybe if 106 or 107 doesn't hold here, then you'll see what happens. With the price dropping, our red position will go into profit, and as delta decreases, we could even face a drop to 100,000. Again, here, 107 is also an important area that should be able to hold the price. Alright. Let's go back to our previous strike. October 15th trades from the start of today until now, and the breakdown of trades on these 3,506 bitcoins for tomorrow. 1,433 have been bought, out of which 420 are calls and 1,012 are puts. Clearly, put buying dominates, and which strike are they targeting? The puts being bought are very close to their strike price. Below 110 is in profit. You can see that right now we're very, very close to it. So, considering this downward leg, what's happened so far is that the puts have played out, because puts wanted a drop and now we have a bearish trend, a downward trend, and it seems to have materialized. So, we can now be on the lookout for calls. We can interpret it like this. Calls want profits above 113, so we can expect a reversal, maybe up to around here, or, to be a bit lenient, let's say up to 114. Up to this upper zone that we've drawn, basically. So, we can expect support at 109,500, at least some temporary support at that level. Sellers, 2,073 Bitcoin sold, 1,057 call options sold. 1,016 put options sold, pretty close to each other, but call sales are a bit higher. They've set the ceiling at 113, which hasn't been reached yet. As you can see, our trend is still completely bullish. And the put options, there are 200 puts sold at 110. And this is really important, because we consider the sellers to be more professional, so we give their perspective special weight. The sellers see the floor at 110. 110 and 200, which we've basically already achieved. It's pretty much been achieved, 109,000. It's settled at this level, so we can say the floor has been achieved, and we can expect the put sales to be realized. We can expect it to be realized, which means around 113. Basically, it doesn't want to go above 113. Alright. So that's from the perspective of detailed trades. Now let's move on to the processed database and 1884 Bitcoin. Alright, let's go. Large trade sizes, for example, 10 Bitcoin and above. Okay, let's increase it. 15 Bitcoin and above. 20. Okay, 20 Bitcoin and above. We have 16 trades, 20 Bitcoin and above. And you can see that it's on a downward trend, meaning our large trades form a curve that actually looks like a put purchase from right here. now we're on the delta curve. We can come down to 101, 102. So for tomorrow, let's look at our large trades. Let's see if there's a strategy among them or not. Which apparently there is. How many pairs do we have? These are actually different block numbers, but here, these two have the same block number, which for tomorrow. We've designed a short strangle. The peak profit of the short strangle is when the price fluctuates between 110,900 and 113 exactly. Just like I told you, meaning support from here and movement up to about, let's say, 114. Up to this ceiling we have, it's a short strangle. The price wants to stay around 90,000 until tomorrow, and again, these two as well. It's another short strangle, with peak profit again between 109 and 113 or 14, and the trades are big, as you can see. Here, for example, we have two Bitcoin calls, short call at 120. This itself is interesting, that these. Well, actually, they entered today as well, yes. They entered today, two Bitcoin calls, which actually means 60. Short call Bitcoin for 120. So now, with 120, you see, here, until tomorrow, they don't want it above 120, meaning in a way. From this particular observation, we can clearly infer that we can indeed move toward this specific level, but we cannot, however, go any higher than that. The double bottom we mentioned. Meaning, if we see the bottom and the exaggeration, we come up and then go up by the same height. Again, going up, it gets close to 120, maybe a bit higher, so here we have another 44 Bitcoin. Long put at 113, which is in profit, has been realized. Alright, let's move on. The liquidity map, the 24-hour liquidity map is showing us a high volume of liquidity on the upside starts from 112 up to 114, here 116, and up to 117. So, there's more liquidity on the upside. On the downside, our liquidity clusters up to 108,900 and down to 108. That means we have liquidity on the downside all the way to 108. Up to this point. Up to this point, we have liquidity on the downside. Its range and peak are at 109,500, from 109 to 109,500 over 48 hours. Yes, right here. You can also see that the liquidity clusters much more on the upside, while it's less on the downside. This cluster and the peak of liquidity accumulation on the downside is from 109 to 109,600. So here, we expect it to stay around this zone. My lower zone starts from 139. Now, a bit lower and a bit higher than that. With the evidence we've seen, I think we can expect support and a bounce up to 134. At the very least, we can expect that for tomorrow, actually. Alright, just one last thing, friends. I want to show you a new setup for the end of the month that will actually make you happy and cheerful. And that is this. Look, from the trade since October 11th, from October 11th itself. Basically, that scary night we all experienced, with that heavy drop, pretty much around that time. Entry trades for October 31st, take a look. From initial entry trades. On the 11th, a bottom formed around 104. You can see we're on this downward path. A price drop along with a decrease in delta, up to this point, down to 104, and then after 104, with the price dropping further. we're seeing an increase in delta, and we see a bottom, meaning there's a bottom forming. It starts, but the red curve is trending upward, peaking somewhere around 116. Now, moving forward, that is, looking at the recent trades after we got past that panic. Basically, that fear of the market subsided. Look at the recent trades, just see how the market situation is. It's gaining strength and rallying toward the end of October. Look at the bullish leg. It's gaining momentum, especially in spots like this. See? Here, our bottom has come back down to around 104 or 105, and from here, we could go up to 122, and if we consider the end of the delta, even up to 127 or 128, actually. Even if we go further up ahead. Again, look at this bullish situation. It gets a bit weaker in these recent trades. Well, the volume also drops, but what matters to me is that the fear that dominated the market has faded away. See? Our curve is actually taking on a bullish shape. It forms, although as you can see here, we could drop down to 104 as the floor, or even lower. Look. We could come down to here, to the start of the actual upward slope of the delta curve. Lower, meaning even down to 100,000. For example, we could go lower, but overall, the curve is bullish, and if I set up this setup, let's see what it looks like at the end of November, for late November. With 6,309 Bitcoin traded, you can see that we would be in profit up to even 133,000. This curve could move upward, even up to 128,000 or 130,000. Although again, here we have a bottom here. Look, if we move forward, again, the shape for November. All these recent trades for November, again, the bullish leg of the curve goes up, especially here. Bullish perspectives are entering the market. So, it's still possible to expect that we're actually at the beginning of a bullish trend for the summary. We can expect for the summary. We could see a move like this. Look, this candle is also forming. Of course, there are still 1 or 2 hours left until it closes, but so far, the shape is. Actually, everything is looking pretty good. Let's say we even go up to around 109, like 200, 109, 100, up to here. Even a drop back down here to around 115,000 a bit. For example, we could potentially play around here for a little while, and then gradually move toward an even more significant 120. We can imagine a scenario like this. Now, as a scenario for the coming days. Thanks for your attention. I hope it was helpful. Until the next analysis, good.